So there is an art to journalism. The market for sports reporting has been dominated by ESPN for decades, and in many cases rightfully so. There is no real competitor that can offer the scale and quality that it offers. Despite the issues that fans, athletes, and people in that industry have with the worldwide leader of sports, they are good at what they do even if the product is not the indisputable best product on the market. As I have discussed before, a market does not necessarily need the best product in the world. The combination of convenience, accessibility, and ease of adoption can make a product or service highly sought after. A better product or service that is hard to find, not consistently available, or difficult during initial use may be something that people may avoid. The biggest risk or threat or external opportunity to the worldwide leader is the growth of alternative media, including podcasting, blogging, sports radio, and social media, especially from content sources led by athletes speaking about the sports they have significant experience in or can eloquently articulate the intricacies of the sport to the fans. Consumers of sports media are shifting away from sports journalism towards the athlete perspective because it is more entertaining and it cuts the middleman out. There is a major difference between hearing a person who is in that moment or similar environment than hearing a retelling of an event. This is not unique to sports journalism, as content from policymakers and political operatives are highly more informative than traditional news journalism. There are many great athlete-led content platforms that are popular, but it still is not an environment that anyone can just jump into and be successful in. People want perspective, not necessarily opinions. There is a blurred but important distinction between giving insight into a situation, what athletes think, how they train, how coaching matters, or what could go wrong, and using your experience as a bully pulpit. Some athletes are natural in this environment and speak to the infrastructure of their sport to project or forecast whether an athlete or team will likely succeed or fail based on what is commonly experienced. Some make it challenging by using their platform to air grievances or lean into personal dislikes of organizations, media colleagues, or rivals, or to relitigate events to make them appear greater when that is not the issue at hand. Some athletes are learning the hard way that using their media channels or platforms to emote following events may not be the best approach. When their expressions may feel right in the moment, there is a need to consider how the content is interpreted by the audience. The art in media is understanding how the consumer will interact with the product and the likeliness of accepting or rejecting. This is why news journalists release or hold certain stories, depending on how they want the audience to react. For instance, Jaylen Brown is a great player, but his comments following my Sixers upsetting his highly talented Celtics was not considerate of how the Boston fanbase may feel about losing a series that you needed a single win out of the last 3 games to move on. In many ways, he was right about how his season was a step forward, but it may have been better to do that the next day and instead acknowledge the fans. If done that way, there would have been predictably less backlash and no need for the back and forth with Stephen I. Smith. Some athletes on platforms they own are navigating the environment by making content aimed at creating takes that evoke emotions that they hope will generate views, likes, and subscribers. Some of these takes may not be consistent with the past content, but it does not matter, because the end goal is to connect with someone feeling strongly about the take that they want to hear. So is there a sustainable market for athlete-centered content and owned platforms in the market, or is it just a fad that will eventually return to the norm? ESPN and FS1 already showed that there is a potential future but investing in these shows to help bolster their lineups. They are adapting to not having creative control over content that will be broadcast over their network. They are accepting what the market is telling them, but I hope they do not overdo it by completely ridding their lineup of journalists that help shape the fan experience. In many ways, there is great value in hearing the journalistic perspective because good journalism includes insight beyond the event. Many athletes may not be able to speak to the ins and outs of the front office, other than what they felt happened, or what they felt was the reason. Journalists who are able and willing to confront the topic from all sides and present a comprehensive view of the greatest moments in sports can be very appealing and entertaining. There is an art to storytelling in sports that simply cannot be replaced. Some journalists are simply able to tell a story from multiple angles that an athlete may not think of pursuing.
Sports fans are cultured to experience the greatest moments in our sports history because many of the iconic moments were told to us by the great sports writers turned authors. Broadcasters who skillfully articulated moments that live on throughout the generations following the event. For Philly fans, the iconic home runs in our history are defined not just by the great performance by the athlete, but also by how icons like the late Harry Kalas or Merrill Reese called the moment. There is something in how the great sports writers tell stories of these events that make them larger than life. Sometimes athletes give us great insight into these moments and what they were feeling, thinking, and how well they were prepared. But the great sports writers can speak to the fan in us in a way that some cannot. The challenge in this space is the debate between whether the sports writer has the proper insight or the credentials to speak on the athletes if they never were an active participant in that arena. So the athlete content creator will try to invalidate the sports writer to create space for themselves. They are not completely wrong or right. Too many times, journalists hide behind the fans and project them as the voice of the fans, when they really have nothing in common with the people reading their column. Some portray themselves as speaking for the fan, but the source would not lose readership or viewership from the next writer to do a column or segment. There are many athletes who simply are trying to relitigate their careers or aspects of their careers that they feel were portrayed unfairly by the media. An interesting approach would be if they had dialogue with the writer to discuss why it was written in that manner. Were there sources that influenced how the portrayal was made? Were there factors that the athlete is not willing to acknowledge that was a factor? Interesting to see that dialogue, if it is able to be cordial. There is an interest in the media market for the subjects to be the people discussing the topics. Every major show has a related podcast or after-show discussion with the actors and actresses. Politicians are getting into the podcast market, hosting or regularly contributing to shows to explain their views and approaches in office. So this is not surprising that the sports world would be the next to join the media frenzy.